Hey, this is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with Nate
Hello.
and Travis,
Hello, everyone.
and we are getting together tonight to talk about Robert Frost's poem, The Tuft of Flowers. Now, before we get to that, I did want to remind everyone if you like my work, if you want to help support me, help keep this going, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog the great. That will be the link will be in the show description, and you can sign up to support me there monthly. And I wanted to say thank you once again to Ann H as one of my regular supporters. And having said that, Travis has volunteered to read the poem for us tonight. So I am going to find there it is. I'm going to put the poem up on the screen, and Travis is going to read for us, and then we will get to our talk. So when you guys can see that.
Yep, looks good.
All right.
All right. The Tuft of Flowers by Robert Frost. I went to turn the grass once after one who mowed it in the dew before the sun. The dew was gone that made his blade so keen before I came to view the leveled scene. I looked for him behind an aisle of trees. I listened for his whetstone on the breeze. But he had gone his way, the grass all mown, and I must be as he had been, alone. As all must be, I said within my heart, whether they work together or apart. But as I said it, swift there passed me by on noiseless wing a wildered butterfly, seeking with memories grown dim or night some resting flower of yesterday's delight. And once I marked his flight go round and round, as where some flower withering on the ground. As he flew as far as I could see, and then on tremulous wing came back to me. I thought of questions that had no reply, and would have turned to toss the grass to dry. But he turned first, and led my eye to look, tall tuft of flowers beside a brook. A leaping tongue of bloom the scythe had spared, beside a reedy brook the scythe had bared. I left my place to know them by their name, finding them butterfly weed when I came. The mower in the dew had loved them thus by leaving them to flourish, not for us, nor yet to draw one thought of ours to him, but from sheer morning gladness at the brim. The butterfly and I had lit upon, nevertheless, a message from the dawn that made me hear the wakening birds around, and hear his long scythe whispering to the ground, and feel a spirit kindred to my own, so that henceforth I worked no more alone, but glad with him I worked as with his aid, and weary sought at noon with him the shade, and dreaming, as it were, held brotherly speech with one whose thought I had not hoped to reach. Men work together, I told him from the heart, whether they work together or apart.
Okay, thank you, Travis. And Nate, would you like to start off with your initial thoughts on this poem?
As a tradesman, I find a lot more tufts of flowers and a lot more piles of poop. I am here to tell you this whole we work together, not apart thing. I'm like, that is a beautiful sentiment. And it doesn't happen very much in what I do for a living. 9 times out of 10, if I got to come behind a guy to fix a system, I'm like, what did this idiot do? I'm like, I walk up to the air conditioner. I'm like, who did this to you, little one? Why, why have they twisted you? Oh, poor thing. And then I've got to try and make it work. But there are rare times where I pop up and look at an attic. I'm like, I don't remember being here, but this is good work. I'm like, all right, whoever set this up really, really did a good job. They should be proud. And those are good moments. You do feel, you can see the personality of the person doing it, And so it's like this kind of work. This guy, he did a great job. He leveled this field, but then there's this one thing he's like, I'm leaving that. I like that. But you can see it, sort of the tenderness of work, or the pride in workmanship when you get to places, because you're like, man, all right, yeah, they put everything up just right. They even ran, like, my line of work, it's easy to gum up the workspace. Like, you'll have people run pipes right through the only spot you can really position yourself. So you're like trying to, not put on a 3/4 inch PVC pipe and break it. You're trying to not. But you'll see people that run it to where it's like there's a spot where you can sit and work, and everything is nice and tight and out of the way, and you're like, yes, well done. This is good work. I approve of you. Stranger here before me, well done. Other times they're like, a pox on your donkey, you bastard. You really do get to see a lot of, working with your hands. You get to see a lot about, the other people who have been there, because, you're working on the same thing they were working on, and so you can kind of tell what kind of person it was by how their work looks. And this shows that this other person had an eye for beauty, and isn't so committed to doing this thing that they can't spare anything in its pursuit. I enjoyed this poem, but it also brought up a lot of unpleasant memories.
So you're just looking at it wrong. Those cluster spots where they failed to give you a spot to sit and work, that was them leaving butterfly weeds for, those were their blooms for you to appreciate. Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting. He starts out by saying, all must be, I said within my heart, whether they work together or apart. And he was saying alone, so that we all work alone, whether we're working together or apart. And then his last line, he switches it to, men work together, whether they work together or apart. And I think both sort of apply to what Nate's describing. I mean, the guy before you was doing it on his own. You weren't there to tell him how to do it. And now you're working alone trying to deal with what he left. And yet, you are working with his work. You can't get away from working with this guy, even though he already screwed it up, in a sense.
Sometimes we stand on the shoulders of giants. Other times we have our ankles gnawed by idiots.
Well, and it's so yeah, one thing, in contrast to a lot of them I do on this channel, this is a narrative poem. It's a short narrative poem, but he is telling a story. It's not just kind of an emotion or an image. And it's like, look, I went out this morning, I was in a crappy mood, and I got to work, and I'm like, man, I am completely isolated out here. And then I found this thing, and I realized, you know what? Even though he's not here right now, I kind of feel like this guy's with me, and that's a nice thing. So, it is kind of funny to me, the title, and kind of one of the main pictures of this, like the Tuft of Flowers, and it's kind of sad that it is this way today. But when we think of poetry in our culture, it kind of has a slightly effeminate associations. I don't think it should. I think that that is a sign that something has gone wrong in our culture, but it does, and for a lot of people at least. And it's kind of funny because this poem in itself is, you know, is on a very masculine idea, like going out, getting the job done right, and in the middle of this, finding kinship with someone else who did his job well. Um, but the title and the central image, or one of the main images of this, the Tuft of Flowers, is about the most like girly image, a girly title. Oh, a tuft of flowers. Oh, I'm a fancy little man. And so I don't know if Robert Frost really sold it on that. I think maybe was a better. Of course, I guess poetry in his day didn't have quite the tarnished reputation it does now. So
Degenerated literature quite so far. But I mean, well, it reminds me, that subject reminds me of a song that I really, really enjoyed, and I kind of wish we talked about songs. Just because, like, it's had me thinking about it. It's "The Bird Hunters" by Turnpike Troubadour. Basically, the story is this guy's out, he come home and he's quail hunting with a friend of his, and like thinking about this girl that like he left home to chase her, and then years later she just chucks him over like, screw you. And he's like, okay, no, screw you, I'm going home. And so he's home now, but it's fresh, and so it's on his mind. So like it cuts back between like sort of pastoral scenes, but it also intersperses it with like him remembering her and just kind of having these thoughts. But also his best friend is there giving him advice. Like, I heard
Bros before hoes.
More like your place before a piece. But my coworker, I first heard it when we were working together, and he said that one of his friends was like, "Yeah, I don't know, man. That seems a little fruity." The way they kind of talk about things. And I'm like, dude, that's only because I'm like, I listen to the words. I'm like, I don't hear anything fruity about this. It's just because it's put in verse. Like if you drop it down to just plain speech, I know both of us have had conversations like this with people. It's like, yeah, dude, that girl's 90% of the way to ruining you, and you broke away just in time. I mean, look at it. She messed you all up. You can't shoot. You're aging. It's terrible. The dog has been here doing what he's supposed to do his whole life, and he's fine. He's great. So yeah, you leave your place and your purpose, and all of a sudden it hurts. I'm just like, yeah, it's such an amazing song. If you don't like country music, you're gonna hate it because it's very deeply country. But just the words it is a perfectly written song, and I love it. And so, yeah, this whole idea that like any emotional content makes it girly is like, well, no. Like I said, it is. I mean, like many of the things we talk about here, it's very human, and it has a lot of things that men are going to want to think about. Like I think another Robert Frost poem, it's called I think "Love and a Question," where like he's describing this place, or no, he's describing this evening where there's this traveler, and like he's out on the road, and the only house, like the only lit house for miles, is this one little house, and there's like a winter storm coming, the weather's turning nasty, and he comes up and knocks on the door, and this young bridegroom opens the door, and it is very clearly like the wedding night, like the girl's still in like her bridal gown, and she's like bending over the fire. She kind of looks up, and the guy's like, night's coming on, there's a storm, I need a place to sleep, but these are newlyweds. And so it's like, they're kind of standing there looking at each other and kind of looking up the road like, I don't want to send you into this night, but also I very much don't want you here. And so the idea that, love and a question, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, whatever, this is going to be mushy. But it actually turns into a really thought-provoking thing because you're like, who do you screw over at that point? Do you like deny your wife the wedding night, or do you, kick this stranger out on an inhospitable evening in the wilderness? Like, what? And so, just so much stuff is thought about so stupidly, and it kills me. That's one reason I keep doing these conversations now, Vaughn, is that I'm like, I believe in the purpose of what we're doing here, which is let's talk about poetry that isn't like, oh, my feelings, I'm all a Twitter.
It's kind of funny to me because like the one of the poets I most associate with like these stereotypical things a lot of young men hate about poetry is like William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud. It's like, okay, go wander somewhere else. We don't really care that much. But then he also was the one who wrote the poem about the victory of Jan Sobieski in the battle of the siege of Vienna. And it was it's kind of interesting seeing the range of someone who has a rather different reputation. Oh, but let's see. It's
Well, to get back to the poem, I think that's one thing I like about Robert Frost. I think I've read practically all of his poems. There might be a couple that I haven't. Some of them are super touchy-feely that I remember. He's a very pastoral guy, and he's extremely consistent, and I just love it. Like I said, he has this very rueful style too, where it's kind of like you can just it's like almost like Eeyore is writing poetry about stuff. So it's kind of like it always has that sort of like almost melancholy tinge to it. Like I've never read a Robert Frost poem and been like pumped. I've always been like, yeah.
Well, and it's also, if you look at the ones where there's characters and dialogue, he's very good at something I don't know if I ever will do, because he's very good at like subtext and subtlety, and like people say things, but they're talking about something else, but like you can still see it. You can still understand what all these other things are that's going on, even though no one's saying it directly. I don't do subtle great. It's not really my strong point most of the time. I like making things go bang. So I don't think that's something I will ever have. But to this poem, it is another thing that's really great about this. And I could probably find others of Robert Frost where he does something similar. There's this very abstract idea. It's like, are we together? Are we part of a group? Are we part of a team? Are we men together, or are we all isolated little units? Are we separate? And this guy moves from one to the other. But Robert Frost in this poem takes this very abstract, very philosophical kind of question and grounds it in very specific, concrete reality. And that's tough to do. That's really tough to take a kind of abstract emotion and put it in a very practical, concrete situation. And that's kind of cool. And so which also that reminds me of. I don't know if either of you have ever read it. There's a book called Anathem. Yeah. Anathem, not Anthem, by Neil Stevenson. Do I have it? I think I do.
That book.
What's that?
I think I own that book.
But it's kind of funny because like I've heard it described as weaponized. I've heard like the plot described as weaponized Platonic philosophy, which is really funny and it's accurate, but it's also like it's impressive that he takes like the most abstract philosophical concepts and in this story manages to make them devastatingly practical, and it's kind of interesting how that worked out, but
So, I mean, I think it's interesting. You know, he shows up to this field and he's feeling sort of alone and he's getting ready to do this job alone. And then, you know, he sees this tuft of flowers and recognizes that the guy before him, you know, had a little personality, a little touch, was, you know, thrilled with his day, and that sort of helped, and he left it there. And it sort of allowed him to emotionally or intellectually connect with this guy that was before him. And he works the rest of the day kind of like, you know, I'm not alone, you know, I've got but he's just as alone as he was before doing the job. It's just he captured an idea because he saw a butterfly and some flowers and connected it to the guy before him. And then I want to point out that he says, you know, that he works and he hides in the shade at noon with this guy. You know, he's basically enjoying the noontime shade with this guy, which is interesting because earlier he says that he goes to the field at 1:00. So clearly there's a time discrepancy there. And
wait, where is...
He says...
No, after... Oh, no. I went in with the grass once after one who mowed it in the dew before the sun. That one is a pronoun. After this other guy who did this other thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Although this other, if he's working for a good while before noon, this other guy must have been out there really early to get this.
The other reality is, you don't turn hay. Like, hay doesn't dry enough. He's out there. It's not saying this, but hay doesn't dry enough between the morning when you cut it and the afternoon. Like, it takes all day, and you rake it, you know, pile it the next day and take it and let it dry some more. It doesn't all happen in one day. At least not typically.
So you're saying that Robert Frost was taking some artistic liberties with the process here?
I believe he was. Yes. What I know of making hay, having done a fair amount of it, I'm
thinking, more than I do.
I'm thinking it's probably actually harder to make hay in New Hampshire than it is in Pennsylvania. So,
what's the phrase? Make hay while the sun
shines. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the sun ain't shining, your hay ain't drying.
That's right.
You want to cut it when you know there's going to be a few good, bright, sunny days so it can dry well. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a pile of moldy crap. You're going to end up
exactly.
Well, and it's so it didn't have to worry about it too much. I'm here to tell you, it's not fun to move in the summer.
Not in this area, especially.
Dust that just makes you feel warmer, like it traps all the heat in your body. Sucks.
One thing that's kind of interesting in this is, and you could kind of look at the symbology or say this is the butterfly is just this kind of random element. Like, it's not like, it's not someone deliberately, I'm going to come here to cheer you up. It's just Butterfly, coming back to where he was familiar with and where he, well, it's also kind of, wait, okay, let me see.
Well, I think it's interesting that he calls it a bewildered butterfly.
Well, swift there passed me by noiselessly a wildered butterfly, seeking with memories grown dim or night some resting flower of yesterday's delight. And, like, basically he's saying the butterfly is trying to go back to something that he was familiar with from before, and everything is changed. And that in itself is a kind of interesting, like, it's like skipped right over, it's barely touched on, but, like, that's kind of an interesting thing in itself, that, like, for a creature like that, something, like, it doesn't know what happened or why. It's just it wants to go back to the things it knew, but the things it knew just aren't there anymore. And
kids now.
Sorry, again?
Why are we talking about 90s kids?
What's the meme? The world you were raised, you were raised to survive in no longer exists.
Then me and Sean both heave heavy sighs. We are the butterfly, and the mown grass, and the flowers. All right, I'm sorry.
But yes, on that topic, look up Brian Niemeyer's commentary on his blog on Generation Y sometime, also known as the Oregon Trail generation. You have died of dysentery.
Man.
But
yeah, no, just the butterfly kind of being like, where's the everything? Like I said, I mean, it is an interesting idea. Like, there's a whole nother idea for a poem there. It's like you can just almost see it being written. It's like, I, the butterfly, after the dew had settled, went back to a field filled with tulip and nettles, only to find it laid waste by such force. And just keep going that way and be like, some dude was here flipping all the grass over. I don't know what he was about, but me and him both seemed to like the flowers that were left, so that was nice. Keep rumbling that way.
Well, and then, the butterfly here, like, it's not trying to tell him anything. It's not trying to cheer this guy up. It's not even, really probably aware that he exists, but it manages to, like, this chance thing, comes in and draws his thought in an entirely different direction, and changes his day. And it's a kind of interesting commentary on how a small thing can turn you in another entirely different direction. You might call it a butterfly effect, if you wanted to.
I mean, wisdom on the part of the narrator. Like, it's that I can notice things around me. I have an awareness for life, and I can make connections without having to be explicitly drawn. It's like, oh, hey, here's a chance thing, and I can learn from that. I can see that for, at more than face value.
Well, and it's also, here, wait, let me go back to that, because, I left my place to know them by their name, finding them butterfly weed when I came. The mower and the dew had loved them thus, by leaving them to flourish, not for us. And so, he was working. He was, trying to, get this done. He saw this butterfly go around, and fly off to something in distance, and he decided to follow it and see what's going on. But he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to follow it. Like, he made his curiosity combined with this creature, took him in a new direction. And so he had a choice that was part of what changed him. He could have said, you know what, I got this job to do. I'm tired. I'm, feeling lonely and isolated. Butterfly, whatever. I'm doing this. But he made the decision, let's see what's up here. And because he chose that, it shifted him in a new direction. So it's also not just something that happened to him. He had some choice in the matter.
Well, he looked at it from a positive perspective. I mean, he saw the flowers. It brought him joy. The flowers brought him joy. The idea of this other man saving the flowers and his joy, he kind of lomped onto that and created hope for himself, you might say.
I can.
Well, and
it really does speak to his character, because I can see a lot of people I know being like, "Look at this jackass left these flowers he cut down. Didn't do the whole job." I swear, some people can't get good help these days.
Mm.
And yeah, it is a matter of perspective and choosing what to focus on, because it equally well could have been him just do the whole job, man. Well, you got everything else. You missed a spot. Hey, you missed a spot over here.
No, not only
which
I got this dude that I got to follow up. He's sloppy.
Well, and it reminds me of a quote from G.K. Chesterton. I think the essay is on chasing after one's hat, but he said something to that effect. But he says, an adventure is only an inconvenience, rightly considered. An inconvenience is only an adventure, wrongly considered. And I've actually found this perspective very helpful at different times that could have been stressful. I actually not long after I heard that and read the essay, I was going on a trip somewhere for a week, and I got to and not only was I going on a trip somewhere, but the place I initially was going to, we were going somewhere else from there. And I got there, and my luggage did not get there. And I checked the luggage compartment on the bus. I was riding Greyhound or something, and it's it's definitely not there. And I just stand up and I look at my friends who came to meet me, and I'm like, I'm having an adventure. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I do think I took it pretty well, and I don't know if I would have if I hadn't had that kind of thing to turn to. What kind of attitude you choose to take can make a lot of difference. So
I think that's another big theme of this, even though it's less said, is that, yeah, I mean, if this guy had gone out there and just been like, I'm going to be pissed. I have a day of hard work ahead of me. I'm just not going to be happy about it. Then, it would have swatted the butterfly, kicked over the flowers, and just grumped all day. And like, this is stupid. This is awful. I hate it. Instead, he's out there like, I want to go talk to this guy. I want to get to know the guy that, is cutting the grass, but I can't find him. Nuts. But, he's not like, I'm going to be angry. He's just like, well, I guess I am alone, as all men are alone. He waxes philosophical instead of, angry.
Well, and I think, like, returning to what Nate was saying about his work, I mean, having been in the trades myself, this positive effect that discovering these flowers, this nice little personal touch of the mower is what kind of perks him up. And just as Nate was describing, when you're working after someone who did it right, it just brightens your spirit. You're just like, oh yeah, there are still some good people in the world. Like, it makes you feel better about the world when you find good work.
Yeah, you're just like, wow, huh. There aren't people in here to just, sort of, push through it and make the hours and not care about anything. Like there's, it's like there are people who still take pride in their work. It's like, hey, and sometimes I've learned things from that. Like, how'd they put that together? Like that works a lot better than how I've been doing this. Take a picture of that so I can.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to start doing it like that. That's better.
Well, and the other thing, which all of us can take from this is like, this isn't just his day. This is like all of us, pretty much all of the time. Like all of us, unless you basically go like full Minecraft mode, where you go out in the woods and you punch a tree down and you break that tree apart with your hands and start building things just from that. Like, you depend every day on the work of other people before you, and like every tiny little thing you do, almost, you're working with the work of previous men, and you're handing something else on to those who come after. And that you're remembering that you're kind of part of that chain. um it is encouraging. It can help make your day a little better. And also, I guess it can help make you remember, what, I need to do this job right. Okay? Because someone else is going to come after me, and if I just screw off, they're going to have to clean up my mess, and I don't want to do that to them. So, or at least if you're not a complete jackass, you don't want to do that to them. Um, so
So I think the line, a message from the dawn, the butterfly and I had lit upon, nevertheless, a message from the dawn. I mean, obviously the mower was there at dawn, and the wakening birds were there, and the scythe was whispering on the ground. But if you take scythe,
he says it like Bill Whittle says it, so I think there's something about it.
But it's like a message from the dawn kind of suggests this bigger message too, from the light, so to speak. Almost bringing an element of spirit into it, if you will.
Well, I mean, you think about it. He's, it's the flowers he had spared along the banks of Reedy Creek that he had bared. He's arriving there at the dawn. There's probably mist rising off the water. There's all this just sort of grass and reeds, and then there's these pretty flowers kind of set in the middle of that. Oh yeah, like the mower was probably struck just by how the contrast of that, just how contrasted and interesting that was. And, I mean, half of beauty is contrast.
That's Gerard Manley Hopkins, "Glory be to God for dappled things." I'll probably have to do that one eventually. I haven't done one of his in a while.
Well, that sounds fun. I'd like to be a part of that one.
You know what? I'll put that in rotation pretty soon. I am currently working on learning a Rudyard Kipling poem, but I can probably put Hopkins in after that.
I find it funny that C.S. Lewis sees Rudyard Kipling as a bit of a red flag against society. If you listen to he calls him out specifically, a couple of his characters, in his essay on chivalry, and he's talking about, like, yeah, these guys, like, the chivalrous man is fierce to the nth degree and meek to the nth degree. Like, he's not some 50-50. He's all things. He's all the way wherever he needs to be. And he's like, it's difficult. And he's like, and so, so he's talking about a lot of times what happens is you have, incredibly fierce, but, like, completely not meek men. And they tend to rise to power, and everything is very brutal. And he's like, and you kind of see some of that even with, Kipling and some of his guys. He's like, can you imagine Sergeant Starkey being meek and hall among maidens? Of course not. Not who he is. And so he's talking about, like, Lancelot and kind of this interesting duality that has to exist to be the man of chivalry, and how this is very much a creation of art, but it is a good thing to strive for. And I was like, it's a great essay. C.S. Lewis on chivalry. You can check out C.S. Lewis Doodle. There's a channel where they do, like, some cool marker art while they're talking about it, and it's very interesting. It's on YouTube. I like them. Periodically, when I get tired of listening to politics, I'll throw just a playlist of theirs on, and, trying to think about something that's actually not terrible. I'm not sponsored by Doodle.
So here, let me see. So this is one thing, and this is a practical detail. This is not a kind of literary question. But the dew was gone that made his blade so keen. Now, for me, mowing grass is something one does with a machine, not with a scythe, by hand. And you don't want to mow grass with a lawnmower when it's wet. But with a scythe, would dew be better for that if you were cutting it by hand?
I've never cut hay that way. Even with machines, we would wait. We would usually wait to cut, like, later in the morning whenever the dew was off of it. So
I think the way it goes, strangely, I have cut grass with a scythe, although literally just did it for fun because I was a kid. We were poor, didn't have a whole lot of activities, but somehow we got a scythe. I don't know. But dry grass tends to just kind of get swatted out of the way, but wet grass, it has a bit more inertia and it wants to clump together, and so you can just get.
That makes sense.
That's been my very, very limited experience. And so, like, because you're cutting, kind of just laying down these swathes. And so, yeah, you don't want to just bat it out of the way. You want it to kind of stick and get cut, kind of like why you would wet your hair before you cut your hair with scissors. You can kind of gather it and cut it, and it makes the cut smoother.
Huh. Okay. Interesting things to learn about. Let's see.
Let me know if the comments if I'm entirely off base, because again, I won't read them, but just you go ahead and put it in there.
All of the masses of people who have cut hay by hand, I know there's a lot of you who watch this channel. Let us know why Nate is wrong.
To be fair, this is the kind of channel those people would probably be on.
Okay. So, I don't know. I think I've got most of what I wanted to say about this poem. And like I said, one of my favorite things about this is, he takes a very he takes a very ethereal emotion. He takes a very abstract idea and manages to really ground it in a specific scene and in and in very particular circumstances. And I think that's kind of a cool trick to do. So, Nate, how about you? Any last thoughts for you on this?
Let this all teach us a lesson that it is how we've discussed it. You're gonna be in situations where what you're doing right now is probably going to affect what somebody else is going to have to do in a few months, a couple of years, somewhere down the line. And so do it well. Have pride in your work. Because ultimately, somebody, even if they don't know what it is either going to bless or curse your name.
Exactly.
And then also, everything you do unto the glory of the Lord. That if you're a believer, that's a very important imperative, because you cannot tarnish, the name of God by associating yourself with him and being an inferior workman. And if you're not a believer, you should be. Anyway, just this sort of is a very practical illustration of that phenomenon, that this guy does his work well, but with vision, and it makes things better for people. And also that we choose. We can be alone or isolated, but we can choose not to be lonely. Because there's a way to connect and to understand other people, even if they aren't there. And so you just got to kind of look a little deeper for it and try for understanding, instead of just being like, meh, I can't see anybody. I am so lonely now. Meh. And so with those twin insights and odd noises, that's what I've got for tonight.
Travis, how about you? Any last thoughts for tonight?
So the thing that I failed to point out earlier that I thought was interesting was his line when he says, "I thought of questions that have no reply." And it would be, I have not pondered it, but it would be interesting to ponder, to come up with questions without a reply. It's just an interesting statement to make. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay. Well, thank you both for joining us tonight, and God be with you.
Also with you.